Welcome into the KFYR Plus desk in the Dakota Drive. We're a couple minutes past the hour here this afternoon, getting things situated still on a Monday afternoon. We had a couple of hiccups, some technical difficulties, and we'll call it equipment failures. So the bad news to start off with is that our guests that we had hoped would join us today are not going to be able to join us today on the program. Essentially, we had a piece of equipment that failed this morning that we used to get our Zoom interviews out on our broadcast, and unfortunately, we just aren't able to do that. So good news is we've got a great team behind the scenes working, and they're going to try to get that fixed here within the next 24 to 48 hours. So that's great news for Jay Dillon and myself, as we obviously use this space a lot for interviews. So we hope to get that back up and running here in the next couple of days, and obviously before next Monday here on the Dakota Drive. We were scheduled to be joined by Stormy Simeon, the Dickinson State volleyball head coach, and then Jacob Holman, the Minot North football coach in Class AA, the number one team in the state. And then Hope McGelkey was scheduled to be our final guest. She has a really cool story. She was part of the U.S. women's para hockey team that won the first ever gold medal in the first ever women's para world hockey ice championships. Unfortunately, we won't be talking to those folks today, but we'll be talking about some of those folks a little bit. And we just wanted to kind of talk about some of the things that have happened in the past week, in the past, over the course of the weekends, that kind of thing. And we'll start it with volleyball, just because I think this is probably one of the biggest and most unique stories of something that's going on in our area right now is Dickinson State volleyball, which is super surprising to say the least. And Stormy Simeon is only been there for a couple of years, and she took over at the beginning of the 2024 season. So this is just her second season, and Dickinson State is now 7-1 on the year. They just went into the Frontier Conference, just like several other teams, just going into a new conference at that level. But they're 7-1 on the season. They beat two top 25 teams in 5 sets in 2 days over the course of the weekend, which is just incredible. Their most recent win was over, and probably the biggest one, was over number 3 Bellevue, and that one happened at Scott Gymnasium in Dickinson. The Blue Hawks win 3-2, and that was, one night after they beat number 24 Dakota State 3-2 in 5 sets as well. So it's incredible to see the turnaround that she's had in just 2 years, because in 2023, this team went 1-23. So to say that they're 7-1 to start this season, I mean, that is the definition of a Cinderella kind of turnaround. Even if you 2 seasons, I mean, she had 2024 to kind of put the pieces together, and then now 2025, they're off to an incredible start. And 7-1, their records online only go back to 2009, so that's as far back as you can find. But this is their best start since 2009. So Dickinson State volleyball is doing something that they haven't done in a long time, and I think it deserves to be talked about. Earlier in the week, they beat Bismarck State College, who was, we talked about it last week on the show, the first time that they were ever going to play each other at the varsity level. A lot of times you used to see Bismarck State play Dickinson State's JV team and that kind of thing, but they had never played on the varsity level against one another. And so Bismarck State traveled out to Dickinson State, and Dickinson State won that one as well. So they've just gotten off to an incredibly hot start, and we do hope to catch up with them again soon. I told Stormy that we're definitely going to circle back around to them at some point here in the near future, because I think it's a story that deserves to be talked about, and they're a team that deserves to be talked about because they've earned the recognition, especially in such a short amount of time. The crazy thing is they only have one freshman on that team. So they have a lot of upperclassmen. Excuse me. They have a lot of upperclassmen on that team. A lot of talent, a lot of returning talent. Another cool storyline with them, not returning talent, but it is someone that's an upperclassman and somebody that a lot of people in Western North Dakota know, Samantha O's. She was the former Miss Basketball from Hettinger Scranton. She went to college. She went down to Black Hills State in South Dakota and played college basketball. She transferred back to Dickinson State. She played basketball at Dickinson State. We actually talked to her last year whenever Dickinson State came here to Bismarck and they played against the University of North Dakota, and she was talking about, just how cool it was to play for, her hometown team, essentially, the team that is closest to her from Hettinger, and, how exciting that opportunity was. Well, she exhausted her eligibility there in basketball, and she comes in and decides to play a year of volleyball. So she played volleyball in high school, and now she's getting a chance to do it at the college level. And so that's pretty cool. And I know that that's something that Dickinson State is fired up about, too, to have somebody that's kind of a homegrown talent helping represent their team and helping give them a boost up front. I haven't had a chance to see her play volleyball yet, but if she's anything, like she was on the basketball court at the college level, then obviously that's a force to be reckoned with. So Dickinson State volleyball off to an incredible start, 7-1. We said it, the best start since 2009 for the program, and somebody that I feel like needs to be talked about, and so we're going to continue talking about him, and hopefully we'll get to talk to him a little bit more here in the near future. Again, we apologize for the technical difficulties we're having today. We were really excited to talk to Stormy about her squad, and I know she was equally excited to brag about them. We were going back and forth, and she was talking about just how fun and how much of an exciting weekend it was for their team, and you have to know it was an incredible experience for all of those girls in that community as well, to see them get that win and get that experience, especially with a win like that over number 3 Bellevue. I believe they were the defending national champions last year. So, I mean, just an impactful win for Dickinson State volleyball. So with that, we're going to jump into talking a little bit of football. And to make the transition easier, we'll just go right to Dickinson State football. We've talked about them for a couple of weeks now, and they actually had the week off, so they played that Thursday night game against Valley City State to open the season. They won 30-15 over Valley City State. Marcus Sanders, the new quarterback, had a great game. Samaj Clark, their receiver, an all-conference player, he had a great game as well. And then they got a kind of a weird bye week last week, and so now they go on the road to Montana State Northern, which will be an interesting test for Dickinson State. A lot of excitement around that team this year, and obviously, just like the volleyball team, going into that new Frontier Conference. So what can the Blue Hawks, do in a new conference after they've rattled off, double-digit straight North Star Conference championships? Can they keep that going in the Frontier Conference? Going to be a challenge. They were picked second in the conference, but they'll obviously have an opportunity to go out and win another conference title this year, and that's extremely exciting for their program, I know. In case you missed it last night, on First News at 5, First News at 10. We actually did another story. I told you a little bit about it, I think, that first week when we talked to Pete Stanton, that we were going to be highlighting a lot of their 100-year anniversary stuff. This is the 100th year of program history for Dickinson State football. I thought that was something that was really cool and something that we could talk about more and just highlight some different aspects. I mean, that's a lot of history to unpack, and there's so many cool stories that I've heard in the past just month since I've been going and talking to people and asking questions. Endless stories, and last night was a fun one that we aired on 2 of the oldest living former players that played at Dickinson State, Milo Doolum and Irv Kessel. Irv quarterbacked the team to their second and third conference titles back in the mid-50s, so he had some excellent stories. So cool to hear those guys talk, and they have so many great stories that they want to share too, which is the best part. Milo Doolum, he was there from 1947 to 1951. He played football and ran track. He's from Killdeer originally. So if you haven't seen that story, go online to yournewsleader.com and check out that story, because we had a lot of fun with it. Had a lot of good responses online as well. So hopefully people enjoyed that. And I'm even more excited. Believe it or not, I'm even more excited about the next one we're going to share. We've got at least one more coming down the pipe with Dickinson State football to celebrate their 100th year anniversary, and it's going to pertain to another person who's been around that program for a really, really long time. But maybe not somebody you would think on a day-to-day basis when it comes to the football team. So I'll leave it at that. We'll have more on that Wednesday, and you'll be able to see that online as well, obviously. But really excited to share that story. We'll keep it going with college football to make it easy. North Dakota State with another huge win. 59-3 over Tennessee State on the road. They played that game in Nissan Stadium. There was a little bit of rain coming down before the game. I'm not really sure that I think maybe it stopped before the game. Maybe there was a few raindrops here and there, but it didn't seem to really impact things, and nothing really seemed to impact the Bison, to be honest. I mean, they were flawless. Obviously, only giving up 3 points. Tennessee State program that's in a much different place than North Dakota State is, to put it bluntly. But that's what you expect North Dakota State to come out and do in that situation, and it's exactly what they did. Cole Payton, just 3 incompletions on the day, 166 yards and a touchdown. But I think the obvious factor was the offensive line and Brie Capino. I mean, he had 10 carries, 57 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, what a day for him. And obviously, he couldn't do it without the offensive line paving the way. That offensive line looks good early on. Obviously, as they get deeper into the season, they're going to get more tested, and we'll see, what they do, and a tougher situation when this competition the Bison have played in the first 2 games hasn't been super high, but this week we get to see the Bison come back home, and that'll be fun to see, getting that home opener. And then you got the new jerseys that everyone's talking about, the white jerseys with the gold numbers. You've got the green Harvest helmet with the gold gold imprints and things like that. I've heard a lot of people talking about them. I've been interested just to ask people what their opinions are on them, because I absolutely love them, to be honest. I love the gold numbers. Somebody did point out to me, and I'll give them credit, it is a little odd that there's not anything that says NDSU on the jersey or Bison on the jersey in terms of on the front. It's just straight gold numbers, just white and then the gold numbers. And the numbers are really big, which I think if you're, maybe broadcasting the game, or if you're watching the game from home, maybe you like that because you like being able to see who's who and being able to tell it really easily. But I do kind of understand the idea of like, hey, we want something that says Bison on it, or we want something that says North Dakota State on it, something to represent our school. So we'll be interested to hear more and more feedback on those after this weekend's game, after people see them on TV. I think sometimes people have a little bit different reaction when they see them on social media, and then they kind of let it digest, and then they watch it for 4 quarters on TV, and maybe it just, maybe you just get used to it. I don't know. But I'll be interested to see what the feedback is after North Dakota State wears those against Southeast Missouri this weekend at the Fargo Dome. That should be another good game for the Bison as they look to go 3-0 on the season, already 2-0. And when you look around the rest of the conference, I think I mentioned last week, North Dakota State's got a couple of these games where it's, what's the competition level like? Are these just kind of games that you're setting yourself up before you get into conference play? And the one that I kind of just thought would be the first challenge of the season is against USD, and USD fell to 0-2 on the season this weekend. So that's going to be interesting to see how, what they look like in another couple of weeks when they see the Bison. Have they kind of regained some strength and that kinds of thing? Obviously, a lot of changes going on there with coaching staff and a lot of moving pieces at South Dakota, but that'll be one that I'm still interested to see how the Bison do once they get to that stage of the schedule. On the flip side of things, the University of North Dakota with a 50-20 win. They get to open the home slate, and Eric Schmidt gets his first win as head coach with UND. And Portland State, kind of the same situation in terms of the competition level coming in against North Dakota. They knew that, I think they knew that Portland State wasn't a super high level team. They had a lot of points put up against them in the first 2 weeks of the season, and that continued into week 3. They only scored 6 points in the first half against the Hawks, and then they added 14 more in the second half. 36 points in the first half for UND, so things were looking pretty good again, and it's hard not to talk about Jerry Kaminsky. I mean, I've seen a lot of fans talking about it online, talking about, the quarterback competition, and it seems, to them, it seems like Jerry Kaminsky, could have been the answer before now, or who should they have handed the ropes to before now? But regardless of your opinion of who's the best quarterback, or who should have played quarterback in the past, I feel like Jerry Kaminsky has made a great argument as to why he is the number one for the Hawks. He goes 14 for 21, 164 yards and 4 touchdowns passing. And then he has 70 yards on the ground, 1 touchdown rushing. So 5 total touchdowns, and just an impressive performance from him again. He obviously impressed on the road against Kansas State. A lot of people were talking about how confident they were in him after seeing him play against Kansas State. And now you get back to the FCS level. You play a team like Portland State, you get your legs back under you, get some confidence. Not that he shouldn't have had confidence from the first game, because he played spectacular the first game, but getting a win, I'm sure, adds some more confidence. And then now they've got a huge test. UND up to number 16 in the FCS polls as of just a couple of hours ago, I guess, just this morning. They're up to number 16, and this week they play on the road at number 5, Montana. So what does that look like for UND? They're going to go into a great environment. It's going to be, that's going to be one to watch, and I believe it's the only ranked matchup in the FCS this week, which is going to make it even more interesting, because all eyes are going to be on that game in the FCS. There's going to be a lot at stake. It's a 2 p.m. kickoff, 2 p.m. kickoff in Missoula. So I was just trying to look, because I wasn't sure if they kicked off in the afternoon or not. North Dakota getting a chance to open their season at home at night with that 6 p.m. kick. So this will be a little bit different for Eric Schmidt's squad, too, as having that afternoon game after they had 2 night games back-to-back to open the season. So we'll see what that looks like for them, but excited to see what they look like as they go into Montana. And I think it's a real measuring stick of one, what does this program look like in terms of competition level at the FCS, and what we can expect of them, and where they stand in terms of this season and the competition. And so I think we'll learn a lot about UND this week. Another one that I just wanted to mention was, excuse me, I'm struggling today. Dang Dang with his first reception touchdown. I mean, obviously there was 4 passing touchdowns, so a lot of guys got involved, but Dang Dang, a guy from, that was recruited from North Dakota and goes to play there at UND, and 4 wins guy, and to get his first touchdown, he had just one catch, and it was a touchdown for 4 yards. So and then to see a celebration afterwards and that kind of thing, and just since then on social media, I've seen the support from his community and things like that. And it's cool to see just how excited people are for his success at that level. So excited to see what he continues to do at the next level as well. So we're going to transition a little bit here and talk about some high school football. We mentioned one of our guests on the show today was going to be Jacob Holman. And that was a good transition. Hey, he's a UND guy. So Jacob Holman, the Minot North head football coach, they're currently the number one ranked team in Class AA. Assuming that still stands, the polls will come out here in the next hour and a half or so from the NDA PSSA. Those AAA and Class AA polls always come out on Monday afternoons around 4 o'clock. I would assume they'll stay put. They've had a pretty good start to the season. Don't see any reason that they'll move. Minot North off to a great start. 41-0 win at Williston and a 28-7 win this past weekend at Fargo South. And Fargo South had a couple of bright spots in that game where, Minot North kind of had to buckle down and, make sure that they didn't let things kind of get to them. And, from what I could tell, obviously they did a great job of that. Minot North is obviously still such a young program, and so there's such a high ceiling in terms of where they have to go, but they've already gotten so far in just such a short amount of time. And last year they go into the semifinal round of Class AA and they lose to West Fargo Horace, who's the eventual defending state champs. I believe it was 42-20 in that semifinal game. So, but Minot North was the 1 seed coming out of the West and had a lot of promise. And I know now they're looking back at that and saying, okay, how can we take that a step further? How can we take that first year of experience one step further and make it to the Dakota Bowl? How can we push it past making it to the Dakota Bowl? How can we, be the team to bring home a trophy? And so I think they've got the right guy leading the way, and Jacob Holman, that's for sure. He's a guy that's from Minot. He graduated in 2014, I believe. He went on to play at University of North Dakota, and his dad was a longtime coach there in Minot, so he comes from that coaching pedigree and coaching background, which is always a cool thing. And I'm sure that he and his dad go back and forth a lot talking about football. But Minot North now, they had to go on the road to Williston. Then they go the opposite direction and go on the road at Fargo South. So they've spent a lot of time on the bus here in the first 2 weeks of the season. So I'm sure Jacob Holman and his guys are certainly more than happy to be sleeping in their own beds and getting ready for a game and not having to go on a long bus trip. So this week's going to be a big one. First home game, and it's against another top 5 team in Red River. And again, those polls will come out here in just a little bit. We'll see if Red River is still in that 5th spot or if they've moved up. Red River had an exciting game this past weekend. Friday night, they come to Bismarck and they beat St. Mary's 14-13. And those two teams, I mean, they're creating, I'll say from my own perspective, it seems like they're creating a pretty good rivalry. They've had some good close contests. Red River kind of had to weather the storm a little bit against them. I know St. Mary's they jumped out to a 7-0 lead in that game. Beckett Price had a 60-plus yard touchdown for St. Mary's, and Red River fought its way back in, and St. Mary's didn't lay down in that one, that's for sure. And obviously Dan Smeeker Field is never an easy place to come and play here in Bismarck. So now Red River has to come off that tough game. How do they come into another tough game against the number 1 team in the state? And this is one that's going to be circled for a lot of people across the state, I think, knowing that it's a top 5 matchup. So that's one that I'm excited to see here this Friday. Minot North has, they've got a good mix, but they've got, in terms of youth and veteran players, but they've got, 3 guys that were all state players as juniors that, are seniors now on this team. And so I think now they've just had more time to continue to develop that roster and build it up. I think that's really good for them. And it's, they're getting that veteran experience, and especially after making that semifinal run last year, they've got good big game experience too to go along with it. We're going to backtrack just real quick because I just had this come through. We obviously spent a good bit of time talking about Dickinson State volleyball and their hot start to the season, going 7-1. So Dickinson State sophomore Carmen Pallone named the Frontier Conference Defender of the Week, part of the Volleyball Player of the Week awards from the Frontier Conference. Carmen Pallone, a sophomore, she's from Montana, and she totaled 15 blocks across 3 matches, averaged 1.5 blocks per set, and recorded 5 total blocks in each contest. I'm just reading this from the press release I got, but I thought it was good timing since we were talking about the Blue Hawks. Pallone notched 4 solo blocks, 1 block assist against Bismarck State, added 1 solo and 4 block assist versus Dakota State, and tallied 5 solo blocks in the upset win over nationally ranked Bellevue. Her first career conference player weekly honor. So Carmen Pallone gets some spotlight there in the Frontier Conference, and well deserved for the Blue Hawks. Going nonstop for 30 minutes, your voice gets the best of you. And honestly, Friday night, kudos to our team here. I mean, Friday nights, what we do for our Friday night football show, this is completely random mind track, but this is what we're working with today. Friday night football show is obviously a big ordeal for us, everyone across the state, tons of station across the country. Like that's what we put a lot of time and effort into, and it garners a lot of interest. And so our Under the Lights show is a big production. We spend a lot of time throughout the week putting the show together, figuring out, okay, what games are we going to highlight? What games are we going to spend more time on? What game's going to go first? What game, different things like that. What games are we going to try to get interviews from if we have the time? Because a lot of times those games obviously run later into the night, and we got to put all the highlights together and all that kind of good stuff. Anyway, so a lot of work goes into it, and there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of people involved. Obviously, myself and Ben, John Jacqueline, John Cole, were the faces on TV, but there's a lot of people behind the scenes that help make it happen. And Chris Dassinger is one of those people. He's he probably won't ever know that I said this, but he's one of our directors, he and Mike Schmidt, and they have been superheroes in terms of helping us get things together, because as we've shifted our name brand to Under the Lights for our Friday football show, they've had to do a lot of work behind the scenes to get us ready for that. Our producer, Reggie Morris, has also been a big help in that. And this past Friday, they were lifesavers. I don't know. I don't know what got to me earlier last week. Grayson, my son, he was battling a little sickness, and I don't know if Grayson passed it to me, if Grayson got it to daycare and then passed it to Dad or what, but by the time 10 o'clock Friday night rolled around, I felt like I had gotten run over. And so Friday night, I was shooting games, and I knew all day that I was not feeling well, but I just couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And Friday night, by the time I got back to the station around 9:15 or so, I told Ben, I was like, Ben, you're going to have to do a lot of work to help me out, because I'm not feeling it, man. I am struggling, and that's one of those things you probably wouldn't be able to tell a whole lot, hopefully not able to tell a whole lot on air, because hopefully I, still try to bring the same energy and everything, but there was so much work to be done behind the scenes in terms of all the great people we have shooting for us and trying to get that video in, trying to get scores in, all that kind of stuff. And Ben did a lot of that legwork, but also Reggie Morris did a lot of that legwork behind the scenes, and Chris Dassinger did a lot of that legwork behind the scenes to make us look good. And they probably had to do even a little bit more than normal this past Friday, because I was not feeling 100%. All that to say, don't be surprised if I'm grabbing my drink because I've been having a sore throat for the last 3 days. So trying to get through talking for an hour at the same time. But let's get back into some football talk. I wanted to talk. We talked at the AA level. Probably did this a little bit out of order, but hey, that's all right. That's what we're doing today. We're gonna go to the AAA level and talk about Legacy Football, who I don't think anybody is surprised that they're good. They came into the season receiving votes in the polls from the NDAP SSA in Class AAA. But man, they have gotten off to a fantastic start. Legacy Football 2-0 on the season. They've had 2 games in a row on the road in West Fargo to start the season, which is no easy feat. You know, they beat the defending state champs, West Fargo Cheyenne, and they beat them pretty well in the first game of the season. And I think that was kind of a statement way to open the year. And I talked to the team before that game, and they were pretty blatantly honest, like, hey, we feel like we can play on the field with them. Like, we're not worried about the fact that they've got a number 1 next to their name. They're the defending state champs, that kind of thing. And they went out and handled business. And so then this past weekend, Legacy goes on the road again. They've got to make that same road trip, and they go to West Fargo. Here's some highlights from Friday night. They go to West Fargo, and they get a win over in West Fargo. And it was a close one, 28-27, and you're going to see a good bit of Packers stuff here, and that's because the Packers did seem like they were in control for a good bit of the first half. It kind of seemed like they were handling this game. A big punt return touchdown there, and West Fargo was kind of out in front of this thing, but Legacy fought back in the second half, and man, they found a way to win. Yusuf Jama, we had him in the sports spotlight last week. He had 2 touchdowns and 154 yards rushing. It was a little bit different than the week before. The week before, I think he had 89 yards rushing or something like that and 1 touchdown. So looked like Legacy leaned on the legs in the run game a little bit more, but Legacy comes out of that one in West Fargo with a 28-27 win, and that's huge, and it's even bigger for what it sets up next, because now they get a chance to come back home, and you're thinking, oh, okay, you get a sigh of relief. You get to play at your home field now on Friday nights. In the words of Lee Corso, not so fast. Legacy will be playing at home Friday nights, but they have to play the number 1 team in the state, Fargo Davies. So that is going to be circled, underlined, bold, italicized, whatever you want to do for everyone in the state on Friday night, because it's going to be number 1 versus number 2 right here in Bismarck, and that's going to be a huge game. Fargo Davies just came down to Bismarck this past Friday night, and they played against Century. The first half, it was a pretty close game. Century was hanging around. Both teams had some miscues. Fargo Davies tried a really long field goal early on that they missed, which wasn't really a big deal. Like I think it was like a 50-plus yard field goal that they were trying and they missed. So it was kind of like, okay. And so the first half ended up being a field goal game. I think it was 6-3 at the half, and the second half was a much different story. Davies came out and scored and made it 13-3, and then it was just kind of off to the races from there. I think Davies ended the game winning 34-3. So it was another win for them as the number 1 team in the state, and they run kind of that unique offense, or an offense that you're maybe not quite as used to seeing. Colton Tesh was a big part of that. He had 9 carries for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns for Davies. So he was really impressive to watch. I was only there for the first half, and then I went over to get the end of the Bismarck Fargo North game, but he was impressive to watch in the little bit that I saw, and Davies has got some good size, so it's going to be interesting to see, and it's going to be really interesting to see just because Legacy and Davies run such different schemes in terms of offense and what they do. So that's gonna be a lot of fun to watch this week. Legacy, and let me backtrack a little bit to that Century game. Century's really good up front too. I think they did a good job of kind of keeping Davies on their heels in the first half. Century's also got a backup quarterback playing right now. And in the first half, he handled things pretty well from what I saw. Again, I didn't see the whole game, but I think he did pretty well. Their starting quarterback, Century was one of the few teams in the WDA that returned their starting quarterback this year, and that was going to be an advantage for them. And Noah Herr, I believe, fractured his arm in the first game of the season, so he's going to be out a few weeks for Century. So, they're battling through some things themselves, but they've got some a talented team, and you know that Ron Wingenbach's going to have them in a position to compete, especially once it comes to playoff time and the end of the year. But looking back at Legacy, I mean, we just mentioned that, very few WDA teams returned their quarterback this year, and Legacy was included in that. Easton Bergerud, their quarterback from last season, he graduated and went to the University of Mary, the same place that Mandan's quarterback went, Hudson Sheldon. So they had to find a replacement there, and it seems like they found a pretty good one. Brody Weigel has done a fantastic job in these first couple of games. When I went to Legacy practice before the first game of the season, I talked to Yusuf Chama, the running back, and I talked to Jack Jolson, their receiver, and both of them were just talking about how much confidence they had in him. Obviously, both of them were talking about the fact that, we've played with this guy our whole life, so it's not surprising to see him, get a chance to start at quarterback, and, we aren't going to be surprised at what he's able to do on the field, but Brody Weigel has certainly stepped up in a huge way for Legacy, but the Sabres are going to have a big one on deck on Friday, and that's going to be the game that I don't want to say that is going to get the most attention because there's so many good games in the state this week, that it's going to be hard to pick between games. There is just we're gonna talk about another one here in just a second, but there's so many ranked matchups. I was looking at our lineup for what games we're gonna go to on Friday night for Under the Lights. I believe every game that we're going to get on Friday, with the exception of one, has either a ranked or an undefeated team in it. A team that's gone 3-0. And so I think that just speaks to how good this week is going to be. Obviously, in Class AAA, it's going to be number 1 versus number 2, Legacy versus Davies. In AA, you've got Minot North number 1 against number 5, Red River. Again, these numbers for polls are from last week. We'll see if they stay the same this week around 4 o'clock this afternoon. But I think they'll be pretty similar. Bismarck, another team that got a win against Fargo North at home this past week. I wish I would have gotten their video in here. Bismarck was really good too. They were up 14-0. I believe, I'm trying to re-rack my brain. I got there just before halftime, but I believe they scored in the first quarter and then they scored again in the second quarter. So they were up 14-0, and Fargo North found a way to get back into that game. They made it 14-7, and it was a great pass to the near corner of the end zone where I was standing, and great pass, great catch, and Fargo North, I think they recovered a turnover to get the ball to score the touchdown. So they kind of had things clicking, had things going for them. And Bismarck got the ball back. And one thing I will say is Bismarck is obviously throwing the ball more this year, which I think is fun to see. It's definitely cool to see. they're throwing the ball this year, but you obviously know they're going to be able to run the ball. And so they got the ball back with 6 or 8 minutes left in the game, I think. I want to say it was like 6.5. And they kept, got a lot of time off the clock. They ended up kicking a field goal, and they ended up securing that one and going on to win 17-7. So Bismarck, another top 5 ranked team right now. They host Shanley this week, so they'll have another good one. Bismarck hosting Shanley. That one will be at the Bismarck Bowl. There's going to be a bunch of games in Bismarck this week. We mentioned Legacy hosting Davies, Bismarck hosting Shanley, St. Mary's hosts Kindred. Kindred, man, they are really good. They're going to have a chance to win AA in the first season they're in it. They're moving up from Class Single A to AA, but they've got so many studs. We saw Brooks Baco when he was, he made the basket to win the state championship in basketball, and that tip-in, that was such a dramatic finish. He's got offers from everybody who's anybody, basically, Big 12, Big 10, University of Michigan was one of his more recent ones. I think Kansas State was maybe one I just saw pop up in the past couple of days that he's gotten an offer from. They've just got some super athletic kids. They're going to be hard to beat this season. So St. Mary's hosting Kindred, and then Shiloh hosts Southern McLean. So that's 4 games just in the capital city this weekend. Shiloh hosting Southern McLean is another interesting one. Southern McLean off to a 3-0 start this year. They just beat Bowman County this past weekend. The week before they beat Hazen, and the week before they beat Carrington, who was a ranked team, I believe, going in. Don't hold me to that. I think they were ranked. They were ranked or receiving votes, but Carrington was a good team, and Southern McLean beat them 14-0, I believe. Southern McLean I think they're probably surprising some people right now in Class A, and they're a fun team. They're a fun team to watch. They're going to be a fun team to watch. I think we're going to have some cool stuff coming with them as well here in the next couple of weeks. They're 3-0 on the season. And I've been doing some looking back to see when the last time was that they started 3-0 on a season, and it's been 15 plus years, I think. So they're in some uncharted territory right now as well. The Rough Riders are, so that's going to be a fun game to watch. Now, outside of Bismarck, there's still going to be plenty of fun football. So that is going to bring me to our next one. Linton H&B hosting Grant County Flasher hosting Linton H&B this week is going to be a top 5 matchup. We'll see on Wednesday what the numbers are. Last week, Linton was 3, Grant County Flasher was 5. Both teams won this past week. Linton H&B scored 73 against Beach in Linton, and Grant County Flasher went on the road and beat Napoleon, and that was a pretty good game. They played at Napoleon at 3:30 in the afternoon. Both teams were undefeated, and Grant County Flasher came in and found a way to win. Coach Jamie Krenz said after the game, I felt like there were some times where we could have put that game away, and we just did it. And, Napoleon was able to find their way back into the game. They had this big punt return touchdown that was huge to kind of shift momentum, and Napoleon tried to claw their way back into it, but Grant County Flasher was able to hang on, get the win on the road, which is obviously another big factor to that. Elijah Otmar was fantastic at running back, big piece of this Grant County Flasher offense. Kelton Freeze, another Freeze brother, playing quarterback for the Storm. And he's done a fantastic job so far this season. But Grant County Flasher this week will be their first home game of the season. So they've also been on the road for the first 3 weeks. They played that first week in Mandan at the Region 4 Rumble. And then, who did they play in week 2? They played at Beach in week 2. and then they just played on the road at Napoleon in week 3. So now they get a chance to enjoy the comfort of their own home. I believe that game's actually in Elgin this week instead of Flasher. So they have those two fields that they use kind of interchangeably to have a game at each place. But that game's going to be in Elgin, and Linton's got to make that road trip. So it's going to be a top 5 battle in 9-man, and that's going to be fun to watch. That could ultimately decide who wins that Region 4. And, we're talking about a game happening on, September 12th or whatever Friday is. What day is Friday? Yeah, September 12th. Could decide who ultimately ends up winning the region. Now, obviously, if whoever wins on Friday stumbles against someone else and then there's a bunch of one-loss teams, it could be a different story. But there's so many good teams in that region, and it's been fun competition to watch so far this season, and I think it's going to continue to be fun, especially once this game is settled, and then you're trying to see, okay, who's playing to play for that second spot, that second seed to get in to the playoffs and that kind of thing. A team that's no longer in that region, the 9-man level had some realignment and shifting of regions, and one of those teams that moved out of that region and is now, it's so interesting because they're in our viewing area, but now they're playing all the teams from the east side of the state, pretty much. So we don't get a chance to see them quite as often, but the South Border Mustangs are unsurprisingly off to a 3-0 start once again. Just a couple years removed from that Dakota Bowl appearance, and it's crazy how consistent they've been over the past 3 to 5 years. They've been consistently good and a playoff team. I'm just trying to do some math here. They're averaging almost 64 points a game so far, if that tells you anything about South Border. Now, I realize, a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's what you expect in 9-man football. Well, everybody's not scoring 64 points a week. I promise you that. Not even in 9-man football. So it's impressive that they've done that and they've been able to sustain it. They played at Richland in week 1 and won 69-21. They had their first home game against Enderlin in week 2 and won 62-6. And then this past Friday, they played at Hatton and won 60-24. So all 3 of their games really haven't even been close. And they've eclipsed the 60-point mark in all 3 of them. But the reason I brought them up is because I was talking about, big games happening this week, and we're going to have a lot of huge ones on Under the Lights, and they're going to have another one. They're playing at home against Lemoore Litchfield Marion, who, again, one of the top teams in the state in the NDA PSSA polls. They're number 2 in the state now, I believe. Number 2 in the state. So they bounced from 1 to 2, I think. New Rockford Cheyenne is the top team in the state now, the defending state champs. But that's going to be a really good game that we have circled on Friday night as well. Going to be interesting to see what Evan Milmer's squad does against a team like that coming into their place specifically. They've got, South Border, they've got so many athletes, and everybody knows they got so many good wrestlers, and a lot of coaches always say, what helps you in football will help you in wrestling. What helps you in wrestling will help you in football. But one of their best players is their quarterback, Berkeley France. He's a 2-time All-State player, and he kind of makes the engine go for that offense. So they've consistently churned out athletes down there in South Border, and it's going to be exciting to see that game on Friday night. So I did want to just talk about real quick, as I pull up one of my other notes here, I did want to talk about the third person who is going to be our guest today, but we mentioned it at the top of the show. If you didn't hear it, we weren't able to have any guests today because we had a technical issue, and we've got to get a piece of equipment replaced, so we're going to work to do that. The people behind the scenes are working to do that as quickly as possible, and hope to have it up and running here in the next few days. But the next person I want to talk about, just touch on before we get out of here, is Hope McGelkey. She had the opportunity to compete at the Women's World Para Ice Hockey Championships, which was last Sunday, is when they played the gold medal game, and she plays for the U.S. women's national team, and they took home the gold medal in Slovakia. Just such a cool thing and such a unique thing. We did a story with Hope back in December, and so in case you didn't see that, she's actually the team photographer for the Bismarck Bobcats. She's from Dickinson originally. She moved to Bismarck, and she took up a job as the team photographer with the Bismarck Bobcats, and she just happened to see a booth for para ice hockey when she was working with the Bobcats one time. And she thought, hey, that might be something I'm interested in. And she hadn't played hockey for very long, and she decided that she was going to go try out for the U.S. women's team. Now, the women's team does not compete in the Olympics because right now there's not enough teams to have it sanctioned. That's maybe not that's the best word I could think of off the top of my head. There's not enough teams to have it sanctioned for the Olympics. So it's something that the sport's growing, and the U.S. team is a big part of helping grow it across the world. They do camps, they do things in terms of helping teams figure out what they need with ice time, equipment, those kinds of things. And so they've been big in kind of helping spread the game globally. And so this very first Women's World Para Ice Hockey Championship has been a big part of helping grow that game, and is hopefully one step closer to getting them a chance to compete in the Olympics. And, Hope told me back in December, even if it happens after I'm done playing hockey, I'll still be super proud to have had a chance to get it to that spot, to hopefully one day get it in the Olympics. But Team USA won the gold medal. Hope started in goal in the very first game of the tournament, and the U.S. won 8-0 over Australia. She first made the U.S. team back in 2021, but again, this was the very first World Para Ice Hockey Championship, so she'll always be able to say she was part of that first one, which is pretty cool. And she's the first woman ever from North Dakota to play for the U.S. women's national team. So that's something to brag about as well. And just a cool thing to see someone locally here doing that. But we're coming up on the top of the hour. We're running out of time here. Thanks again for joining us today. Obviously a little bit different setup than what we have planned on a week-to-week basis. And hopefully we'll be back to normal once we get back here next week, and we'll have another good lineup of guests as we try to get things prepared for next week. If anything changes, we'll let you know, or maybe we'll just do this again. Maybe we'll just sit and talk again. But thanks for watching the Dakota Drive installment 3 already. Hard to believe. We appreciate you joining us, and hope you join us tonight at 6 and 10 on KFYR, and then we hope you join us on Friday night for Under the Lights. As I said, we're going to have a loaded lineup, and we're excited to get that kicked off on Friday night because there's going to be a lot of good football games, and I think we're going to have less games on air so we can spend more time talking about those really good games. And so we're really excited about bringing you more coverage from that standpoint. But thanks for joining us on the Dakota Drive. Enjoy the rest of your Monday afternoon.